Under the glowing lights of Dublin's Grand Theatre, a nervous young man stood backstage, clutching a worn-out guitar whose strings told stories of struggle and hope. His name was Miguel Santos, a 22-year-old from Manila, Philippines, who had come all the way to Ireland chasing a dream his late father once whispered into his heart, "Son, one day the world will hear your voice." Now, that moment had arrived. Miguel had grown up in the crowded streets of Manila, where life was a daily battle between survival and faith. His father, once a local singer in small bars, had passed away when Miguel was just 16. His mother, Rosa, worked endless shifts in a garment factory, sewing dresses for people who'd never know her name. Yet, every night, she'd come home humming the same Elvis Presley song, "Can't Help Falling in Love," the song Miguel's father used to sing to her. Miguel learned to play the guitar from watching his father, using an old instrument that had been repaired so many times, it looked more patchwork than wood. His voice, smooth and deep, carried an old soul's melancholy, a sound that people compared to Elvis himself. But Miguel never sang to imitate, he sang to remember. When Ireland's Got Talent 2025 opened auditions to international performers, Miguel saw a glimpse of destiny. A friend from his small church community helped him raise money for the plane ticket. He sold his father's last watch, the one thing that still smelled like home. "I'll buy it back one day," he promised himself as he handed it to the pawn shop clerk. Standing backstage now, Miguel could hear the crowd roaring for the act before him. His palms were damp, his chest tight. He whispered a short prayer in Tagalog, "Lord, let my voice touch hearts, even just one." A stagehand motioned him forward. The lights dimmed, the music faded, and Simon Cowell's familiar, skeptical face appeared under the spotlight. "Hello," Simon began, his tone both curious and cautious. "What's your name, and where are you from?" Miguel stepped forward, his accent thick but his confidence blooming. "Good evening, sir. My name is Miguel Santos, and I came from the Philippines." The crowd applauded. A woman in the front row shouted, "Mabuhay, Philippines," and Miguel's smile finally broke through his nervousness. Simon leaned forward. "You came a long way. What brings you to Ireland's Got Talent?" Miguel hesitated, then said softly, "My father used to say, music can travel where money can't. I'm here to sing for him." The judges nodded politely, though Simon's expression remained unreadable. When the lights focused on Miguel, the audience fell silent. He sat on the small stool at center stage, adjusted his guitar, and began to strum the familiar chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love." From the very first line, something shifted in the air. Miguel's voice wasn't loud, it was tender, steady, and hauntingly pure. Each word dripped with sincerity, with love, with grief, and with hope. It wasn't a performance. It was a prayer. The camera zoomed in on Simon's face, his usual poker expression softened. The other judges, Alicia Dixon and Lewis Walsh, exchanged looks, visibly moved. When Miguel reached the final verse, his voice trembled slightly, but not from fear. It was the sound of someone who had carried years of longing and turned them into light. The last note echoed across the hall, followed by a silence so deep it almost hurt. Then, suddenly, the entire theater erupted into applause. People were standing, cheering, crying. Simon Cowell, for a moment, looked speechless, something the audience rarely saw. When the noise calmed, Simon leaned toward the mic and said in a rare, softened tone, "Miguel, I've heard thousands of singers, but I've never felt what I just felt now. You didn't just sing, you made us feel. You sing better than Elvis." The audience gasped, then exploded into cheers. Miguel's eyes filled with tears. He bowed deeply, whispering, "Thank you, sir." When he walked off the stage, trembling with emotion, the host ran to him. "You did it, man. Simon Cowell said you sing better than Elvis." Miguel just smiled through tears. Maybe he just heard my dad in my voice. That clip, the humble Filipino boy making Simon Cowell emotional, went viral overnight. Within hours, it hit millions of views on YouTube, especially in the United States, where fans fell in love with his story. The hashtag Filipino Elvis trended on X and TikTok for days. But fame wasn't what Miguel was after. A week later, during the semi-finals, Miguel sang an original song he'd written called Letters to Heaven. Before performing, he told the audience, "I wrote this for my mom, who still believes in me more than I believe in myself." Halfway through his performance, the camera panned to a woman in the audience, his mother, Rosa. She had flown from Manila with the help of donations from strangers who'd seen his viral audition. When Miguel saw her, he froze for a second, eyes wide, his voice cracking. She smiled through tears, nodding at him as if saying, "Sing, Anak. Sing." And he did. He sang as if the heavens themselves were listening. After the show, backstage, Simon approached him personally. "Miguel," he said, "you have something rare, honesty. Your voice is one thing, but your heart, that's what people connect to." Miguel smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir. I just want to make my mom proud." Simon nodded, then did something unexpected. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a gold watch. "I heard you sold your father's watch to come here," Simon said quietly. "This isn't the same one, but maybe it can remind you of how far you've come." Miguel froze, speechless. The cameras weren't rolling, this was real, private compassion. He could only whisper, "Thank you. I'll never forget this." Simon smiled faintly. "Just promise me one thing, never stop singing." By the time the finale arrived, Miguel had already captured millions of hearts. Fans in the US and Europe shared his story as a symbol of perseverance, family, and faith. The final performance night was electric. Miguel chose to sing "If I Can Dream," Elvis Presley's anthem of hope. Before starting, he addressed the crowd. "This song was my father's favorite. He used to tell me, no matter where you are, sing like the world needs your voice. So tonight, I'm singing not just for him, but for everyone who's ever felt unseen." His voice soared through the theater, raw, powerful, and breathtaking. It was no longer about competition, it was about connection. When the song ended, there wasn't a single dry eye in the audience. Even Simon stood up, applauding with both hands. When the winner was announced, it wasn't Miguel. He placed second. But that didn't matter. Because when he walked off the stage, hundreds of fans, Irish, American, Filipino, were waiting outside the theater, holding handmade signs. "You're our Elvis. The world heard your voice, Miguel. From Manila to Dublin, you made us believe again." A week later, Simon Cowell invited Miguel to perform on The Tonight Show in the USA. It was there, standing on a grand stage under American lights, that Miguel realized what his father truly meant: music had indeed traveled where money never could. Months passed. Miguel's story continued to inspire millions. He used part of his newfound fame to start a foundation in the Philippines to provide free music lessons to underprivileged kids. When asked why, he simply said, "Because someone once believed a boy like me could sing for the world." In an interview with CNN, Simon was asked about his most memorable audition ever. He smiled and replied, "A boy from Manila who sang Elvis like no one else could, not because he wanted fame, but because he wanted to heal hearts." Back in Manila, in their small home, Rosa still kept the old broken guitar hung on the wall. Every night, when Miguel called her after a show, she'd say, "Your father is proud, Anak. The world finally knows what I always knew." And Miguel would reply softly, "I'm still singing for him, Ma." Sometimes, before going on stage, he would take a quiet moment to look up and whisper, "This is for you, Dad." Then he'd smile, step into the spotlight, and let the music, and love, do the rest. Because in the end, Miguel's voice wasn't just better than Elvis's. It was something even rarer, the voice of a son who turned pain into purpose, loss into legacy, and music into a bridge between worlds. And somewhere in the echoes of his song, the world could almost hear a father's whisper carried in the melody, proud, eternal, and smiling from above.